I agree with the French imam who today called the slain journalists martyrs for liberty. Today's murders are part of a larger confrontation, not between civilizations, no, but between civilization itself and those who are opposed to a civilized world.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. We continue our coverage of today's horrific terrorist attack in France. And joining us on the Malzberg panel, retired New York detective, NYPD detective, and 25-year veteran of law enforcement, Harry Houck, and former Navy SEAL and FBI agent and President of the United States Continued Service, Jonathan T. Gilliam. Gentlemen, let me first start with the mechanics of the attack, who these people might be, and let me ask you first, Harry, what you saw when we see these videos over and over again. Who were these people? If not, what group? Who were they, speaking from a training point of view?
Yeah, well, I think at first, we really don't know as of right now if it was ISIS or Al-Qaeda. But it definitely sounds to me like it's definitely an Islamic group, and a radical Islamic group, as a matter of fact, because they were yelling Allah Akbar when they were continuing the attack. You could see during the attack that it was a precise attack and that the attack was well planned and well trained. They were very well trained for this attack. And
what about it when we talk about the logistics, knowing where they were going, who was going to be in attendance? They were in an editorial meeting in the conference room, and the way it was carried out, Jonathan, this says, trained professionals of some sort, correct?
That's absolutely correct. Whenever you do a mission plan, you're always going to think out the different contingencies and the way that you can get the biggest bang for your buck when you're a small unconventional warfare unit, and that's what these individuals were. And I don't think there's any coincidence that they were having some sort of a conference where all these people were there. When they went in, they had pictures and were supposedly yelling out for these individuals that they wanted to shoot. And then you can just see by the way that they hold their weapons, by the fact that they're dressed the same. They have, the attack vests on with all the ammunition on there, and the smooth and ease, the smoothness and ease in which they operated and shot. They didn't waste their rounds, and they didn't have any fear as they moved and covered each other and went back to the car, and even as calmly enough to reach down and pick up a shoe that was on the ground before getting in the car. I mean, that shows planning. And that shows people that understand their surroundings.
Yeah, and I want to get back to that shoe in a second. Let me ask you, Harry, the fact that they weren't suicidal, or they weren't at least maybe they were willing to die, but they didn't plan it that way. They planned to get away, and they have gotten away to this point. What does that tell you as far as again who these people, the training they had?
Well, it seems to me that they definitely wanted to try and get away. They were wearing masks. All right, they were all wearing all black. They had a route of escape. Whether or not there was a problem with that escape because a vehicle was recovered, we're going to find out. Once that vehicle was recovered, I'm sure the police knew right away that it was a vehicle used because they were all probably reeking of gunpowder. So I would probably say that's the vehicle, and it's probably going through forensics now and being able to track maybe information that they pull out of that car. Forensics is going through it. Any fingerprints, any DNA, did they leave anything behind because they had to get out of the vehicle quickly? So, I mean, we've got a lot to work with here in this case.
And Jonathan, that shoe. Yeah, first of all, I also want to bring up how calmly, and we saw this in the video, one of them went to that ailing officer who had been wounded and laying on the ground and looked up to the terrorist, and then the terrorist, shot him, just killed him, shot him very calmly, very coolly, and then went back to the car. So weigh in on that, but also the shoe, there's all kinds of speculation that the guy needed that shoe because they were going to change clothes, and he didn't want to leave it behind. So what would that indicate to you? But start with the cop.
Well, I think that, it was hard to watch that with the law enforcement officer. I don't know if he was armed or if he wasn't. If he was, that sends a signal to all law enforcement that you have to stay in the fight until the fight is over. And even if you don't have a weapon, you have to stay in the fight. You have to assume that you're going to survive, and if you're not, you're going to take one of them down. And if you look at the video, the things that really stick out to me, it's not just the guy shooting this cop on the ground, it's the other guy that's covering him. He's covering him while he shoots, and then they turn around and move back to the car together. And the way that he's holding his weapon is very similar to somebody who is used to patrolling in an operational field for long periods of time, the way he's holding the weapon over his body armor or the attack vest. Now, going back to the case with the shoe, it could be that they had other clothes to change into, because when you wear a mask and you wear a black outfit, it's as simple as taking that off and wearing street clothes, and you're going to disappear, especially in the surrounding communities that have a high Muslim population.
All right, yesterday we had Jonathan on, and he talked about a piece he wrote describing the things we need to do to stay safe in 2015. I want to get the expertise of both Jonathan and Harry to talk about, God forbid, the possibility of that happening here, and what we could all do to be on high alert as citizens. We're coming back with more right after the break. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with the Malzberg panel, part 2. Retired NYPD detective and, of course, a 25-year veteran of law enforcement, Harry Houck, and former Navy SEAL and FBI agent, Jonathan Gilliam. And, Jonathan, as I mentioned, you were with us yesterday, and you talked about, in part, a piece that you wrote, the top, I think it was 10 things that we need to do to be safe in 2015. Let's talk about this. You know, we keep hearing that there's really no way to prevent this. A lot of people are shocked. And we're shocked in the aftermath of 9/11 that we had never seen this to this extent happen here. I mean, I hate to say it, but it would be so easy to accomplish here, right?
Absolutely. You know, and that piece yesterday talked about personally what we can do here and the things, the security issues that we have that are going to face us in 2015, because every year that goes by, nothing gets fixed. And I actually wrote another piece on my Tumblr back in October talking about the fact that law enforcement is not ready for multiple attacks that happen all at the same time, which happened like 15 attacks by ISIS in one day back in October. And, you know, this today, every time you add an element to training, every time you add another operator in an attack, the danger and the death toll can go up exponentially. And we really need to start looking at this, not only happening in multiple cities, but having multiple groups or teams of people coming in and doing these things. I mean, it's as easy as the right guys getting into the United States and acquiring weapons. As I've said many, many times, the day that a weapon, the second that a gun was invented, it will always be in the hands of bad people.
Right, right. And Harry, specifically with regards to New York, this is one city that immediately changed its terrorist preventive profile based on what happened today and took precautions. Talk about New York, because, you know, I think it was the president who once said that his biggest concern when he goes to bed every night is that a nuke will go off in Midtown Manhattan. Yeah,
I mean, everybody's you know, concerned about something like that happening, but here in New York, we're prepared. The NYPD has done a lot of work since 9/11, working with the FBI and Homeland Security and maintaining this the security of the city. We haven't had an attack since 9/11, and it's really some people think it's strange that we haven't had an attack like this type that occurred in Paris here in New York or anywhere in the United States. But it just goes to show you how great a job Homeland Security and local law enforcement are doing, you know, to protect us, and that we haven't had an attack like this.
And Jonathan, one of the things you talked about yesterday was awareness. But, you know, does awareness really cut it at this point? I mean, I don't think awareness could prevent something like this. You would need, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would need manpower and firepower that would be the equivalent, at least, of what's going to come in on the attack to a facility, to a building, to an office, to a school, to prevent it. No matter how aware you are, and even if you got like one armed cop, that's not going to stop it, right?
Right, but let's start, I mean, when you say awareness, it comes in different fashions. Now, this wouldn't even be the case if France had a better immigration policy and had a tighter hold on who travels to the battlefield and back, and starts, you know, really looking at the people who are having these riots that they've had in France for a long time by the very same people who are probably carrying out this attack. On the ground floor, though, when something like this happens, you know, love them or hate them, the NRA says it best. There's nothing better to stop a man with a gun than a good guy with a gun. I mean, that's the truth about this. And you know, when we use words like Kerry did there a little while, Secretary Kerry saying that these guys were martyrs for freedom, the guys that got killed, you know, they stood for freedom of speech and freedom of the press. But to go so far as to call them martyrs, you wouldn't have to be a martyr if you prepared and hardened your facility when you're going to reach out and throw verbal assaults at an enemy. You have to be smarter than that.
Yeah, that's interesting, and Harry, he makes a very good point. Talk about you know, the Hercules forces. I remember, you know, seeing them since 9/11 from time to time, you know, with the vests and the helmets and the heavy weapons standing here or there. But there's only so many of them to go around, correct?
Yeah, but they're strategically placed all over the city. So if we had an attack like this in New York, believe me, these guys would face automatic weapons from our police department. There is a plan in this city for an attack. They're prepared for it all the time. They practice for it all the time. And, you know, the fact that here in Paris, even some police officers don't even carry guns, I was hearing today, which I was really shocked about. And the fact that they had just pulled the security from this building because they haven't had any threats against it. I know Europe's got a lot bigger threat from Islamist terrorists than the United States is. It seems like Muslims that come to this country assimilate. But apparently they don't assimilate in Europe, and that's why they have a big problem.
Can I just say one thing
Yeah,
about
go ahead,
that?
Jonathan, sure.
You know, I agree with what Harry's saying, but here's the one thing that goes against all the preparation. The politicians and the city planners in New York and many of the cities around this country, they do things like Times Square, where they build places for people to sit and gather. And we're not talking about 10 or 20, we're talking about tens of thousands of people. Meanwhile, they do not shut the roads down in Times Square. That is like having a freeway go through Disneyland. And it's ridiculous. That is there's a reason why the guy went there before with a bomb. Luckily, it didn't go off. But 6:30 on a Saturday is when he tried to do it. That would have killed literally 1,000 people or more, right where he put it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right, that's very true.
And how important, Jonathan, is recognizing the enemy? Because this administration, although they called it a terror attack, will never say Islamic terror.
Right. Here's the key to that is you have to prepare your society. Otherwise, you're going to have a society of weak, uneducated minds. We do not need to teach helplessness to the United States public. We need to teach them to empower themselves and be aware. I think in Sony's case, I think in this thing over in France, there were insiders that had to be a part of this. And I think that, you know, people need to be aware. I'm not talking about turning around and snitching on everybody.
No, that's interesting, though, Jonathan. We have less than a minute. You think insiders within that magazine?
I think so, because the fact that they chose the day that they did and all those individuals are there at the same time, and they were able to get inside. I think this was a secure, somewhat secure building. I think there will be found possibly somebody that was involved.
You agree, Harry?
Yes, I agree 100%. There's no way that they know they're going to have a specific meeting that day.
Right.
No way that they would know all these people would be together. They knew, and I'm sure that the authorities in France are looking at that right now, and they're going through everybody's name.
And that would narrow it down if, in fact, they could they could figure that out. Someone who wasn't there but would have access or knowledge. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you both very much. A trying time today, and thank you for your expertise and coming by, Jonathan Gilliam and Harry Houck. Okay, when we come back, folks, Dinesh D'Souza will join us, and he'll weigh in on what occurred today. Don't go away.